Welcome to CJ's Chat Box. We have something quite interesting today because I have these three handsome gents with me today who I have interviewed before at different times. But I am a dumpster diver and a laundry room seeker, and I found this wonderful book called A Curious Mind, The Secret to a Bigger Life by Brian Grazer. And I remembered, I knew who that name was because he's got that crazy hair that stands straight up, and he always does shows or movies with Ron Howard. So I got it and started reading because I am a curious person. And so as I read it, I thought they talk about it near the end that you could have, conversations with more than one person. One-on-one is good. And when I've interviewed you people separately before I did taped you, there were so many wonderful things to ask that, I needed more time. So I figured you guys will be great for this. And whether or not you have a curious mind or have you given it up? I think as children, we are always asking questions. Why? And they, our parents or grandparents say, stop asking so many questions. And so we hold it all inside and we stop asking questions. And the curiosity is there. We should be able to continue to ask. So what I'd like to do today is just find out what things you're curious about. And I know you were thinking about it and ruminating about curiosity.
I'm still thinking about it.
What? You have no curiosity?
Still, it's a good question. And when you brought it up, it's something I never really thought that much about. So I asked myself directly, well, what am I curious about?
Right.
And I'm still looking. I mean, it's an interesting question because for me it'd be bits and pieces of this and that. Something strikes my fancy and I might take an interest in it, or something else might go by. It's really a kind of a hard. I mean, for me, it's when I see a guitar player playing something that's very impressive, I'm curious about how does he do that.
Right.
For me, it's the big picture. The big curiosity picture is kind of small now. Little things that I'm interested in.
But do you follow up then?
Oh yes, sure.
If somebody does something like that?
Absolutely.
You go ask them how do you do that?
I'll either ask them or I'll go online and look for it and see if I can find someone to teach it.
Okay.
So that I spend time doing that, and
Right.
and as you said before, or have you outgrown it or whatever, or are you done with it?
I've been getting, I know I was always curious, but as I get older, I'm more curious. Maybe because I have more time on my hands. I don't know.
Maybe it's because we have less time on our hands.
No.
Right. We know the clock's running.
And then now we get curious more, want to know more things about things before we check out. It's, you want to answer some questions that maybe you kind of let slide for years,
Yeah, want to know the why for that. How about you, Joe?
And thanks for clarifying that. It's nice to join everybody, and we're all neighbors in the village, so we have the luxury of discretionary time. That's nice. And actually, if I can, based on your setup, I think the main thing that's been rewarding to me, I guess, a sacrifice love, is the astronomy club. That they're,
I love that.
We've all lived our lives somewhat, or have life experiences, and you have to pay the bills and get to work and do the laundry and all the details of life. But as far as curiosity at this point, I'm in 63 now. I feel like I've looked at I was raised Roman Catholic. I've looked at a lot of religions, but our actual expression of life here, our existence, it's a mind bender to me. And what I'm most curious about is DNA on one hand, and then astronomy. That I feel like there's a creator, and you can worship him in a variety of ways, but the curiosity to me, I guess, mostly in the past couple of years, is the astronomy of trying to understand the actual universe, what God created for us. And we could talk about this for hours, but between comets and asteroids and what we think we're looking at is often proven totally different than what's really there. So anyway, that end is I'm very curious about, and we meet monthly and have discussions about different topics. Like, there was an asteroid that we hit with an interceptor, actually, to see if we can deflect one of these rocks that we thought. And when we hit it, all of a sudden it turned into a comet and grew a 6,000-mile glowing tail off the back of it. So it kind of shows
Surprise.
we're still, we're curiously venturing off of the planet Earth right now, and we're sticking our finger into things, and it might turn out to be a light socket and wipe us out, or we don't, we're taking some risk there. But that Elon Musk, the push for colonizing other planets, and that push is really significant. But then mostly every day, like I said, we have to get through the day and take care of our daily tasks. But DNA, if you think about, we've figured out a code that there's 4 letters in this code that creates you, me, every living thing that's ever lived. We've discovered that there's a 4-letter alphabet that can express everything from a frog to a giraffe to every life form that's ever lived. That's really strange. So
it boggles my mind to think that, again, I think it's because you're so distracted and busy with the rest of your life, and now I don't have a life, really. So therefore I can think about these things. And I watch documentaries.
Or you have more
nonstop.
discretionary time, I think you're
Yes.
saying. Yeah,
Good. Thank you for putting it so nicely.
You do have a life. You have a wonderful life.
One of them I just watched recently was Earth and its atmosphere or something. But it talked about all these other planets that they can only see from a distance, and there's dust storms, but they were talking about what causes the lightning and all of that and the thunderstorms, and with Saturn and Jupiter, and I'm like, oh my stars. That is fascinating and interesting, but the thing that I've gotten into recently, which when I say it, you're going to laugh, quantum physics.
Nothing laughing.
Oh my stars. There's something on PBS that I watched was called Einstein's Quantum Riddle. So it's all about quantum entanglement.
Steve's been studying that. He can explain it to us.
Einstein had a problem with that.
Yes, he did.
He didn't like it. He didn't like
Well,
the
in the
idea.
60s, they proved him wrong. There
Right.
is entanglement.
Well, there is, right. He didn't like it. He thought it was,
Well, 'cause
what did
it
he
didn't
call
fit
it?
his-
Spooky action at a distance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because it didn't fit his plan. And what they show on there, which again, I have to stop this because I can't absorb it all. But it's like if you put 5 dominoes standing up, and the domino effect, you hit one and they all go down. Well, if you put one here and one there, and one goes down, the other one does. So they're proving there's no space. All frequency, all stuff. She calls it energy naturally. The field of energy to study that, and I've got a couple of books by Lynn McTaggart that I watch, and I watch her on YouTube. There's one on there I watched the other day called Power of 8. That again, putting like minds together, and what they can do with that. I mean, it's phenomenal, and where you can measure your thoughts. That there's actually, and you can, everything alive, you can get reactions from it. That kind of stuff just absolutely.
The invisible spectrum of energy that we recently discovered, A, exists, but now B can monitor every single frequency that interacts with our biology and has other effects based on discrete frequencies. So our eyes are these receivers of this energy all around us. But also, being as a curious thing, our brains transmit 5 different frequencies simultaneously all the time, and they're low in the hertz range, so they travel as far as they can that's the farthest transmission is low frequency. But who are we talking to, each other, but it's 5 discrete frequencies, just like a radio. If you dial in a certain 92.3, we're on that one, and we're on 4 other ones that we know that we're transmitting to somebody right now.
But that's the part that, if we have the ability to do this, and we don't know it or believe it, so we're just sitting on that, and then pretty much we're going to be gone. And it's like, why did I have to realize this late in life that I could transmit? I should have been transmitting things to you a long time ago, Craig.
I think you've been pretty successful at it, actually.
Well, I think the curious thing is that we're not individual units. Most of us go through life and think it's a hard knocks, and I got to do this, and I have this and that. But we're not individuals the way we think of ourselves. We're interconnected, not only to each other, but
the self is kind of an illusion. The sense of self, of being uniquely one thing, separate from everything else, that's kind of an illusion, because we're all connected on that. And maybe, because we're always transmitting information back and forth, quantum, quantumly, on the quantum level. We're always transmitting information back and forth to each other, whether we're aware of it or not. So there's a whole spectrum of reality that's existing, that's operating beneath this system. And there's still an Andy Griffith amount going on. That's a whole lot going on.
That DNA web of, like, they know that there's forests where if a tree gets some kind of fungus or gets attacked and injured, it actually can send a signal out to all the other trees, and they'll increase. They'll create defensive measures to protect themselves against this threat that's coming into the forest.
Just the awesomeness of live things in nature. And one of the things that this book, Living with Intention, talks about is the fact that a scientist had these plants, and he thought to himself, I wonder what they would do if I because he knew they're alive, etc., put some water in there. So he poured water in there, and nothing happened. So he thought, I wonder if I lit a match, and the plant started to react. And he hadn't done anything but think it. He hadn't even lit the match. So that's, again, what we're not aware of is the power of our thoughts.
Thoughts are real things.
Yes.
They're real things.
They're real things that can be measured.
Yeah.
Also, they said you may think your body is just this, but it's not. You have energy field, but you have so much more out there than we're aware of. I mean, why have we not stumbled?
That's how we've developed the 2-foot rule when you're with other people.
Oh, I see.
Your personal space.
Your personal space, because it does go out. People get inside there.
And they
I knew a guy who worked
that.
years and years ago when I was working in a machine shop, and there was this one guy who would come in and he would get right here and he'd be talking. He was just a normal, nice fella, but he'd get right here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He just didn't understand the convention.
Yeah.
You know?
Get away, back
and
up.
finally, I'm the guy that said to him, "Look, you got to understand something. You got to get back out here a little bit, brother, before you know." This is too close.
Look you in the eyes. So what are you curious about?
Well, it's interesting after reading that book. It's nothing as deep as everybody else has been talking about.
Well,
But
still, it's curiosity.
one of the things that struck me right off the bat, he talks about Google searches.
Oh, yeah.
And, 10 years ago, if somebody said, hey, did you know that somebody did this? And you go, no, I didn't know that. You can't look it up. It's not in an encyclopedia. It's something that happened recently. But now with our information age, somebody says something, you can bring it right up on your phone and instantly find out the information. And not only that, then it leads you down another rabbit hole. It says, well, if you're interested in this, you're interested in that.
Yeah.
Just like if you're watching any type of YouTube videos, next time you bring up YouTube, it's going to give you 100 different related subjects on the same matter.
It's like the algorithms know what we're curious about.
Yeah, like they know what
And
we're
I guess
thinking.
that part of me doesn't like that at all, in the sense that you can look something up at Google and then you're just inundated with all that stuff. It's like, hey, that was a private thought that I had with Google. What are you doing this?
Yes.
And there's no such thing as privacy anymore.
No.
They're in our space all the time because of the internet.
Yeah, I think it's the most powerful weapon on the planet, information.
Yes, but
And
what
it's
scares
how-
me then is
how the-
AI.
Yeah.
That's going to even be 100,000 times worse than what we're doing right now.
Yeah, with, I guess it's Tesla's making the Optimus robot. But these things will know us way better than we know ourselves. You know how I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday? If you have a robot hanging out with you, and kind of with our phones, that's the state right now. They know where you went, what you ate, who you were with, and 100% accuracy. That another curious thing you could think of. Humans, we are what we are with our potential, with our mind thinking the center of information processing. Mm-hmm. But now we've built a brain outside of our own bodies. Like we're sensors that we receive information, we process it, and then we act upon it, or we choose not to act upon it. But we're like this constant processor running. But now the internet is that trillions of times more powerful than us, though. It has much more sensory input. It can process it way faster. They're going to be driving our cars for us all over the place, and that's just the scratching the surface. But basically, we're going to. In fact, if I can, not to go too long-winded on this, but we've recently discovered we have a microbiome, about 1,000 tribes or colonies or species of bacteria
Yum.
that digests our food for us. But we need them. We would die without them.
Yeah.
So we're nourishing them, but they're doing a role in this mission to keep our bodies going. Mm-hmm. And to me, I feel like humans, we have our capacity, and we're running, and we have a purpose and a reason, and whether it's Christ-based or anything else-based, but there's a purpose we exist. I think that's pretty much universally agreed to. But to understand what it is, our role in the universe, is like the bacteria in your stomach looking at the intestine and understanding the whole body. Like there's no way from that point of view that they have a vital role to us, but they can never understand the ultimate purpose for existence. And I think that as we look in the universe and we're bewildered and we don't understand it, it's the same orientation. We have a purpose and a reason. We should live our best path forward. But the ultimate reason, to me, is unknowable at this point.
But most people...
Not to disrespect anybody of faith.
No. But most people don't even get to a place where they realize, what is my purpose and why am I here, type thing.
I think
we may live to be 100 years old and say, why am I here? I don't feel like I'm serving a purpose.
George
the plus side...
Oh, Carlin, are you going to bring him up? Go ahead.
George Carlin thinks it's to make plastic. The Earth couldn't make plastic for itself.
So we had to do that. That was our
but
purpose. One of the things that is in one of these intensive things is also when they do experiments and so on, is that we think that the brain is the master controller, but it is not. It is the heart. And so if AI is going to be replacement for our brain, I do not want to ever think that it can replace our hearts, because that is definitely unique in every one of us.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised that...
Although there is, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's certain hormones, we're very complex machines that create empathy and compassion for others, in the whole political structure.
Right. But they get that if they're flashing all these different things on a screen, that however we react, whether we're scared or happy or glad or mad, that message to the brain to tell us what we feel is coming from the heart, not the brain.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I went like, oh, yeah. Well, because biblically, you don't hear them talking about the brain. They're talking about the heart always.
But most of the heart is pumping the blood supply around the body and then the internet runs with the energy source. They all have backup batteries and uninterruptible power supplies, and that whole that's a curious question whether you could argue the internet today is a higher intelligence than us. In my opinion, we could debate that some, but
also,
whether it could ever have compassion or a heart or the sense of, hey, we need to preserve these people rather than harm them.
Is it going to have tears?
How could we know that AI has compassion? Well, there's no way to really know that.
No.
Because
they could tell us.
We can teach it to act as if.
Yeah. But that's also a
we
scary
can program
thing.
that into it.
Right.
But does agency come out of it? How does it come out of that?
I think Craig touched a key thing of who's controlling the thing. It's tremendously powerful.
That's the scare
and it can do tremendously good. Like you have a medical condition, used to go see a doctor and he would do an assessment based off of his life experience. AI can do an assessment on you off of everybody on the planet that's ever had your condition for the last 50 years and say, this is what I think you should do. I mean, just infinitely better. But
then you get to that. It's like if they can do everything and do it better, then what is the point of our existence? It'll get to that. It's like, it's not really me, it's George the robot.
We have to clean the robots and get the dust out.
Well, when you bring up that point about what's the purpose of our existence, all you have to do is, to me, that's a and that is a curious question.
It is.
Right.
If you look
the ultimate
when you look at the scope and size and scale of the universe, if you look at those pictures from the web,
and that we're a speck of dust.
With the web, with all those galaxies, and it's a picture. It's only this big of a picture, and there's a million galaxies right there, and then there's so many more, and it's so mind-bogglingly huge and then you think about where we are in that, and it becomes infinitesimal.
Yeah,
it's like a planet.
Have you been to Griffith Observatory?
Not yet. It's on my bucket list, and so is the astronomy club, because that's the first thing in my life I was ever interested in.
Well, you better
Oh,
get
right.
there.
I had my first telescope when I was 10.
You have an opportunity, yeah. It'd
Yeah.
be fun to engage in. Yeah, that's there's a bronze statue of Einstein at Griffith Observatory, looking at his finger like this,
Yeah.
and that much of your finger at the night sky down at Palomar Observatory, they image that small percentage of what's there, and there's over 2 million objects, millions of galaxies and stars all out there, and they have the largest photograph in the world in the basement down there at Griffith. That to look at that, I mean, if you want to feel small, who's the other, Steve Martin? Let's all get small. That's the ultimate, like.
But again, and
It's-
there's
it's
where
humbling.
but there again, when we see what's available and what's doable, and there's no limit to it because we keep finding new ways to do that. How do we then find our own purpose? Find our own. I'm important. I'm loved. That kind of thing, so that you have some reason for being. Sometimes
sure.
your reason for being was to have a child, or to discover this or discover that, or help someone do something. But you have to have
Well,
something
yeah.
to weigh against that vastness where you start to feel like a pebble on a beach.
Yeah, it's easy for life to feel overwhelming, and that not only are humans insignificant, but any one individual, is can be a challenge. But we have a biofeedback loop too. I think, like, to
Yes.
nourish yourself, what you can feel, whether, like, if I go to yoga, does that feel like a strengthening experience, or how you choose to spend your time? That we're here for a flash of existence. That you should listen to yourself, I think, and say, yeah, this is good for me, or. Same thing. Craig, was that on film with the guy getting in your space, or was that before we started?
Oh, that was years ago.
Oh, but I mean,
it
as
was
far as
now.
like energy, how you feel, we're literally like an apple or the earth or the sun or ourselves. We have this energy plume of electromagnetic force that we need to, and we can get more in touch with. And so, I think it's an amazing time to be alive. But
It is. If we again become aware of it, instead of just vegetate and I'm old, I can't do this, I can't do that, and think about all the things you can't do instead of thinking about the things you can do now.
Yes.
So, what do you think has, after reading the book and looking around at life you lived, in the past or now or future, anything that it sparked an interest of, like, ooh, I'd like to know more about that? Anything like that?
The book probably opened my mind a little bit about being more curious in the effect that, as even I think Joe alluded to, when you're young and you're raising a family, you're focused. I got to do this, I got to do that, and you're not even paying attention to anything around you. So you haven't got time to be curious. And now I think we have the luxury. Because our discretionary time, we can become curious about all kinds of things. And just as he explained, just like the astronomy clubs, that's just one opening. If you walk down the hallway over there at Clubhouse 4, all the flyers of all these different interesting subjects that people are talking about, you take a couple of them and you go experience those. Or even just one of my friends who comes from Arizona, from another retirement community, he says, just go sit down at a table when guys are having coffee in your community and ask them about their life, because everybody's got a story about their past, whether it be guys that served in the military. I was talking to a gentleman the other day that was flying over during the Cold War. He was on an Air Force plane that would fly back and forth over Alaska, monitoring what Russia was doing, and Russia was doing the same thing with us. And he had some real interesting stories. I never thought of that. I never thought of anything that was going on. I was too busy trying to put food on the table.
Yeah.
And
then
there's always that opportunity, as you said, just sitting down with a bunch of guys having coffee. Because when I interviewed the firemen over here at the station 22, I remember asking the one guy, I said, they're down my street 4 or 5 times a week. You just boom them all the time. And I said, you must get tired of all of us, our aches and pains and our falls. And he said, no. He said, when I was on the truck, I loved going there, because he said, I would meet war veterans or widows of war. He said, they are fantastic people, and their stories are, to be told. And I think that's the part that we have around us if we seek it out. One of the gals that bought something from me on Marketplace the other day, she works at the towers. and she came over and she said she caretakes a gal there that's 107.
Wow.
And she said she can only go take care of her in the afternoon because in the morning she has online classes. So she's busy.
God bless her. Yeah.
And so her mind is really good. And
Yeah.
she said when she walks, she's just capable as everything. And she's 107. Now, one of the keys I would think is I want to keep my mind going as long as possible, because once that atrophies, history, But don't be giggling. But that to me was so exciting to
relating
hear.
to that, that's all. That's,
Yeah.
Because, being in I've worked hard all my life and took care of my house, my family, my wife, and the yard and everything, and paid the bills. And now I'm retired, I'm a widower, and being vegetative to me I'm curious about that.
I was surprised.
Just relaxing. Now I find myself, I'm relaxing because I sit down and relax and take it easy now. And it does allow my mind to go into,
Those
like you were
places.
saying about, I don't have to take care of business anymore.
Yeah.
I can
And you
let
wonder
things
the
happen.
relative worth. It's not measurable. I like to mow
Right.
the lawn or clean the bushes or something, or
So
have
you
a sense
can-
where you could see
Afterwards, you
got
can say,
something
I did
accomplished.
that.
Yeah, you wonder the value to just like ponder things
Yeah.
and share thoughts, kind of like what we're doing right
Yeah.
now.
Well, I remember I talked to Craig
can't
on the
measure
phone the other
a heart-
day, and
yeah.
we hadn't talked for quite a long time, so we were trying to talk. And as we talked, the more we realized, I don't go out much at night either anymore, and then we didn't do this. And the thing that we were both surprised at is how content we were with that. That it wasn't like an issue or a problem, like I never go anywhere. It was a contentment.
Yes.
To reach a place of contentment, that
I think
is...
there's cycles where
Sure.
because the unknown and trying to figure out something, whether it's a puzzle or that mental struggle, we tend to rather have our house in order, or all the ducks in a row, or know what's going to happen. Some people don't like to be surprised at all. Some people love to be surprised, but I know I have family members that don't like surprises, no matter what it is. Like they just don't want to deal with that, like the unknown.
The stress.
Where then you have people like Elon Musk that are saying we have to go become interplanetary.
Oh, yeah.
And what's that going
Always
to do to
pursuing
us?
something.
Yeah,
You
like-
mentioned briefly before, and this is in one of those books I've been reading, about biofeedback, how popular that was back in the 80s. Everybody was biofeedback.
Transcendental.
And then all of a sudden, it kind of, we don't hear about it much anymore.
Yeah.
And how helpful that was in getting in tune with what our body was, trying to tell us that we couldn't grasp. So why did they, have they found new ways to do that so we don't need biofeedback anymore? Or how do we get in touch with our senses if we do?
I think it's a huge field that we need to pursue. Even that energy that we transmit, we never knew it was really there. Now we know it's there and we can measure it. But so now we should understand it and look at it more. But we're not really doing that as a society.
Yeah.
That's the other curious thing is what do you see on your TV and your newspaper versus what's the real important stuff going on, like bombers flying over Alaska and
Right.
we're trying to intercept them, or things we should be curious about, we don't even get exposed to largely. In fact, that's, if I can, is the DNA factor. Not only do we know that every single cell in your body now has 3 billion lines of code that describe you as an expression of life, but we have tools that can manipulate that and change it. Whether it's a vaccine or CRISPR, it's called. It's a bacteria that actually, if you give it a little piece of DNA code, it'll go find it in your genome and change out it's the TCGA lettering. And
That would be something I wouldn't want anybody messing with either.
actually, right, and a tremendously powerful tool that could do beautiful things for
But
us,
it will
cure
use it
genetic
to do
defects and
rotten
things,
things.
but could
Just
harm people.
look at,
too.
the people that were in prison because of no DNA at that time. And so now that we've, discovered DNA
Oh, yeah,
and can go back and get those
The
guys
Innocence
out.
Project of
But now what
proving
are we
this guy
going to
didn't
do?
do it.
What
Yeah.
are they going to come up with next if DNA, we've already got that and it's a great tool and used for this and this. But if they're going to go in and mess with that,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the uniqueness of us is that we all have our own DNA, just like fingerprints.
Yeah.
That nobody has another set like ours.
Can I jump in for two thoughts?
Yeah.
If anybody's curious on that DNA and its potential, a guy named Yuval Harari wrote a couple books. *Sapiens* was like a New York bestseller. about how we got here to dominate the world. We're not the fastest, strongest, or even the quickest thinking, but as a species, we dominate the planet inarguably. But now with DNA, he wrote a book as far as man God, that we can now create life forms that wouldn't exist in nature itself. That the power of God, you could say, or to create life is now in man's hands. And there's, whether it's the CIA or MI6 or others, there's programs, deep, top secret type stuff. Even people, just like the way we built the nuclear bomb, people were working on the effort and they didn't even know what they were doing. They had some compartmentalized role of it. But that power to understand and control genetic coding is like...
Again, we're back to the...
that doesn't go on the front page.
Whether it's AI or the DNA, you give that power to any one entity. Whether it's a government or whoever it is, that is, to me, the most dangerous thing we could ever see, because we don't know how to do something just for good. It's got to have power and money and greed attached. Because if it starts out good, somebody's going to take that and make $1 million off it. Because that's all they think. That's where we go with that.
And the quest for power, people...
Oh, power is just absolutely addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime somebody tries to lift you up, says you're the greatest keyboard player ever, tell them, yeah, well, thanks a bunch for that. But if you let that go to your head, holy Hannah, you're in a mess. Anytime that you seek something... whether it's, your abilities, your talents, your looks, whatever it is, and you buy that and start filling your empty bucket with it, you got to get that all the time. Like people that are on stage, that without that, I saw a thing on Celine Dion, that as ill as she's been, the one thing that she misses more than anything is that audience participation where she feels a part of them.
Oh,
that she feels...
Recent news, she's not doing well.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she was out of the business for quite a long time, but she was back and she sang it. When was she?
Recently.
Yeah, some big.
They did that special about her, and that's how it ended.
But then she ended up singing for something that was controversial, it turned out later.
To think about curiosity, though, on the music, and Craig's musician, that if you think of like hearing a song from the 50s or 60s, and it'll trigger a memory cell somewhere in your brain, we don't know where, but it changes your whole biology. You just feel like content with the world, or whatever it does to you. But to hear a vibrating sound, which is a mechanical pressure on your eardrum, and be able to change your whole biology and state of mind, all of a sudden the little things that upset you don't bother you. And
but even the smell will do that.
Yeah.
The smell of fresh bread or cookies or something, but also the ability to, what do you do with that when it happens? Because they said you can't find memory in the brain, but we know we have it, but it's here somewhere.
And I think it's not even just in the brain, like you were saying earlier. Our whole body, like when you play tennis, your body, it's the whole system's working to respond. Yeah. Often the brain's not that active.
That's interesting because Bruce Lee said, never say bad things about yourself because your body will remember it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
Well, the book I'm listening to, it's called The Body Has Secrets. So all the trauma, the PSD guys and stuff, it's the body that holds that. And so as you're talking about a memory, a smell, and all that the body is holding this, and how they release those memories, and whether it's going to be, constructive or destructive, is whatever that memory is. And
I forget the name of it, where they did some experiments playing music for people that had Alzheimer's and hadn't spoken in years, and then I forget. Do you remember the name of that?
No,
there was a black guy that never spoke. Then all of a sudden he said, "Oh, that's when I had that red Chevy, and we used to go down to the shop." And he came alive inside, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And it triggered something to completely change.
And would it be? For me, it's interesting that music from the past, say, or a smell from the past. Why that is what triggers it? What is it about that is the strongest? That makes our body do what it does. Why? Can we answer why? Does anybody know? Why would that be?
But to survive, like you know, you're making decisions every day to find food, avoid becoming food, and then replicating is another requirement of DNA survival. But we make our decisions based off our past experiences. So, you know, if there was something that, a powerful message that you got, whether good or bad, that'll affect how you respond to the world at the point of the present time. So, I don't know, is that what you're asking? Like,
Well,
why do we have this memory?
Why is it smell? Well, I mean, it's our senses,
yeah.
you know, and why there's some that are so much stronger than another. But the fact that when people get to be the age they are, say in here or other retirement, that their memories of visions of where they've been, what they've done, sounds they hear that bring back the memories.
Now you're
smells
talking
they-
about method acting, by the way. That's exactly what
Is
you're
that
talking about.
how you do that?
Right, when Lee Strasberg would teach this. You have to recall the sense of, when you put yourself in the situation that your character's in, you need to think yourself back, what was the smell like? What was I seeing? What was I listening to? What was I hearing? So that
Relive it.
So that you can relive and evoke, be
All that.
evocative, to
Yeah.
bring back all those definitive memories that will trigger emotional response.
Yes.
So that's what you need to bring to your character to give it a sense of reality. And it's a whole process they go through to do that. Some of them are good, some good at it, some not so good. But
You're all old enough to remember this, hopefully, Ricky Schrader
Sure.
from The Champ,
yeah,
and how wonderful he did in that. And he cried just awful in that.
I
And
did
they-
a data dump or didn't know it. What is that?
It's called The Champ.
A movie that?
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, with
I
Ricky
don't think
Schrader
that's
when
it.
he's just a little guy.
John Voight was the
I think
boxer,
so.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And they asked him, you know, on talk shows afterward, can you tell us what you were thinking about? Because, again, how do you bring up that kind of crying that he did? And he would never tell anyone. So where he got that from his own life,
well, because
Yeah.
we carry, from day to day, we carry the sense of our experience all the time with us. And that's what gives us, that's part of what gives us our sense of reality and to relate with other people in the same token. So when they have the actors think actively about what they were feeling, thinking, smelling, what were the colors in the room you were in at that
Right.
time,
Right.
because we share, those are the experiences that we carry with us every day anyway. And when you're on film, you want to be able to fill that camera with the reality of a total experience of a person. That's why the great actors can do that and make you believe it. Other actors are, you know, they just have to be a type, and that's the best they're going to get. The really good ones can evoke
Give-
all of
yeah.
that and bring it all to a screen. And that's something I am curious about, is how actors on
some
screen acting is a whole different thing than
Yes.
than being on stage. It's a whole different process.
but
It's,
sometimes they get into the part so
yeah.
deeply,
Yeah.
they don't get out of it very easily.
Well, yeah, that's
So
whatever
that
their
can
process
be-
is, but
yeah.
but whatever it is they have to do to
Touch that
to
memory or
touch that
feeling.
sense of reality, so other people can feel it as well. Because when we're with each other, we still feel. I feel your experience, and you feel mine.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we
I mean,
share all that.
Okay, thinking about that, being with people where you want to have conversation, meaningful conversation, to get to, I want to know who you are. I want to know more about you. I want to know what makes you tick. I mean, one of the reasons I'll have you here is because I don't think you're afraid of that. But there are people that are so shut down that they don't know why they are ticking. They don't know what they feel or don't feel because they're like in such a guarded position and everything is behind a prison wall. My God, what kind of a life is that? That they can't
Yeah.
even interact with someone else on any intimate basis whatsoever.
Yeah, I think the internet that we mentioned, like the upside of it, that you can touch a piece of glass and anything you want shows up at the door the next day. But on the
Yes.
other side, kids don't talk to each other. Like just us
Yeah, that's-
talking and sharing thoughts like
That's
this.
going to come around and
Yeah, that human,
Be
whether
that
one-on-one or in a group, they're really losing.
Yes.
We're losing that as a humanity. We're all
Yeah.
tethered onto these electronic things that all turn into zeros and ones and fly around the universe. But then we're like losing our connection to who
well,
we
the,
are.
the communication for sure, but also they're not going to be able to read one another facially,
Yeah.
body language, because they're not looking at
Well,
them.
their phones will do that for them.
I know, and they put
No,
the
I'm serious.
emojis
They'll
on
hold it
there.
up, they'll hold the phone up and let it run a little bit, and then the phone the AI will tell you everything you want to know about that guy.
I just,
Imagine that.
And the question is, because our grandchildren and maybe their kids, the world they're going to inhabit is going to be nothing like this one.
No.
Because these devices now are going to
Replace.
instill some evolutionary kind of change.
Right.
That something's going to happen to the DNA down the road
Right.
that's
Yes.
been influenced by all this
Yeah.
ability to have this information right in your hands all the time. And if they don't have to relate one-to-one to each other, then what's the next step?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about what's the next step from. Doesn't mean they're going to just sit around
we-
in their own little cubicle and never
but
do anything.
It can mean, 30 years ago, they were talking about that, how isolated we would become. And because now we have all the stuff that we can communicate with and still be isolated, that's kind of where we've been at, and especially with the pandemic. It gave us a real taste of lockdown and not getting out of your house, and what that did to us, depression and suicide
Yeah.
and everything, because we're social animals.
Right.
So we need to do that.
And it's somewhat of a choice, I think. Just like a lot of skills or crafts, people have a different starting point, but then what you nourish as far as whether you feel connected or not. Like you can feel isolated in that this skin is a hard boundary and I'm separate from everything else. But I think there's more and more measurable evidence that that's not true, particularly with DNA and the energy fields, not just aromas, you said, but like even chemistry and things that are transmitted, and we're shedding DNA code now, and these viruses and things we're ingesting, and it's changing us. But I think to feel, personally, it's a little comforting to me. It takes the pressure off of life if you feel like we're interconnected in this DNA genome in ways beyond our understanding right now. That's right. We need to stay curious with it, but also, to me, it's humbling to not feel like. My personal outcome is that very significant in this process. We're all just one of 8 billion nodes huddling around on the crust of the planet here. We don't even know what's really below us or above us. And
Have you noticed that sometimes
everybody should chill out a little more.
when you're talking with someone, and again, one of the things that I crave is stimulating conversations, meaning talking about something that's worth our breath. That sometimes when you're talking with someone, and that as you share something personal or an intimate a part of yourself, that opens a door.
Or can be releasing, yeah.
For someone else, and they know, okay, if she shared that, I guess I could share this. That to me, if we could be more authentic and upfront and truthful in any crowd that we're with, the others are more apt to do the same thing, and you would have more meaningful relationships, conversations, etc., than just everybody just talking nonsense about nothing. Why waste your breath? And that, sometimes you walk into circles, whether they're at Clubhouse 5 or wherever you're at, and they're saying the same old things, but nothing is really comes home. It's all out here again. It's safe to just talk about fluffy stuff, but don't bring anything close to the heart, because then I'd have to really deal with that. And it's like when this one guy told me that he'd been, I don't know if he's a widow or divorced, but he'd been for 15 years. And he said it kind of took me at least 10 of those years to, kind of like being with myself. And I said, it took me many years of enjoying my own company. Some people cannot be alone because they can't. They'd have to think about who they are or what their purpose is or what they've done or didn't do, whatever it is. When you spend time alone with yourself, it can be a very scary place. So we have to meet every week, people.
That's a blessing of where we live, with 250 social clubs and all the music and stuff going on. They know that's nourishing too. That your physiology is strengthened from that.
Yeah.
And we apparently live 10 years longer than the rest of the nation on average. So there's something you touched on a significant, point of value to be aware of.
The other thing that when you mentioned about our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, et cetera, is that I was talking to a girlfriend the other day about the fact that we're the same age, so what we think about what's going on in the world has to do with what we were raised with as standards, values, and morals. Well, these generations are not raised with any of those. So they are not even going to necessarily miss the things we miss because they never had that set of
Right,
values.
but I think they'll develop, I would,
Their own, but
their
that, I
own
mean, that
sense.
scares me to death.
well,
That would be.
that's probably not true for every generation.
Yeah.
What those kids are doing
Yeah,
now is
that's
scaring me to death. Who knows what they're doing?
Oh, my
That's
God.
probably a normal.
My parents were scared of Elvis Presley. Can you imagine how unscary that is now?
Well, that's what I mean, and,
Yeah.
things just keep rolling along. The older generation is always going to wonder what the next generation is up to.
Are they crazy? What
Are
are
they
doing
crazy?
that for?
Why don't they do something with their lives? Why don't
Well,
they?
even
But
the-
it just takes.
Looking at you guys,
Thanks,
which
growing.
I'm kind of happy about. But now, I mean, when you saw somebody with a tattoo on their arm, you always knew the military. And it was always kind of
Or
sexy.
biker.
You know, or biker. I wasn't hanging around bikers much, but I wasn't hanging around military either. But you knew that. Now, they're covered from head to toe, male, female, nothing.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my goodness. And I've heard it's painful, but that also it becomes addictive.
And all the facial piercings and
Yeah,
stuff. And
and
yeah,
to
they
me
get
it's just
3
so-
here, then they want 6
And the
here.
nose.
I don't
They're
get
searching,
They're
nose.
looking for their own authenticity. That's what
And
they're
they have
looking
to do,
for.
I know, but why?
Why not?
Oh, change your hair color or
Well,
something.
see, here we go. But this is exactly, you just proved my point.
Yeah.
About when we're older,
Yeah.
we've adopted our morals and ethics
Yeah.
come from our experience,
Yeah.
and I think we sort of naturally expect those to carry on because
Yeah.
we value them
Yeah.
so much that
Right.
the next generation must understand these are great things. But a couple generations later, they've got a
Well,
whole
and if we
different set.
haven't
Well,
passed them on, then that's partly our fault.
I think you pass
Right.
on as best you can, and
And
they'll
then what
adapt
they
them.
do with it,
and what
yeah,
it's up to
whatever.
them.
Yeah.
But I think that's an eternal process of like, societies evolve with certain norms and conformity. And then teenagers, they actually chemically change, and half the stuff they do, they don't know why they do it even. But to challenge the status quo, just say,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that, I'm doing this. Well, why are you doing that? Just because I don't want to do what you're doing.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be like my parents. And it's like, it's in part of the program of a species to challenge.
like
And then
whether-
you either uphold or you change. And we're like part of this evolution that's going on.
Well, and part of whether it's puberty, they're going through puberty or they're going through whatever it is because that's why they rebel or why they do this or why they do that. It is part of their maturing and acting
Yeah.
out until they get to us and then go, what was I thinking?
And that it's kind of like a hyper curiosity, you
Sure.
could say, that they want to test the system, and then they're also testing themselves.
So,
Can I
see.
do that?
Yeah.
Do I want to do that again, or next time I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing?
Yeah, yeah, and that again, and all the things
Hopefully they learned from it,
But peer pressure will do that too. It's like, I don't really want to do this, but everybody else is, so I guess I will,
Right.
So again, that the things in our lives as to how we did and got into the things we got into. I know Craig was into acting and producing and directing and so on. And how you got into that, where you lived and how your
Well, that was
area-
passed on. My mother's side of the family was in show business. My mother was a singer.
Oh, okay.
My grandmother was an actress in silent movies,
Oh, wow.
and her brothers were musicians, and so
Out here in the West, or
Well, for my mom, it was the North and Northwest, and Grandma was Chicago. She was making films, silent
cool.
movies out of Chicago. Somewhere there was a movie that she starred in,
Wow.
little Mary Franzman, and we went to my older sister went to the National, where they store everything.
National Archives.
Thank you. Yeah, in the archives, and was searching for it, and they found it, but it was so degraded.
Oh.
And before they had any processes to restore it, so we couldn't get it, which is too bad.
Yeah.
Those are fun to watch sometimes. You talk about body language and
Yeah,
interpersonal
yes.
skills. They had to.
Act
They didn't
out
have any
something,
sound,
like
so
no
yeah, all
sound,
had
and
to be
really
visual.
have the expressions of that.
Yeah.
How did you get into? I mean, I know you play guitar. Is that other music stuff that you do? I know you sing too, but
Yeah,
not
but
enough.
that was just in recent years, I'd say.
Oh,
Last
is it?
25
So you never
years.
did that before?
Yes.
Well, and I know that you. Thank you for that because I know that you've helped me with my car at times. I could call you all the time for
Now,
that.
that was from youth. 'Cause
Was it?
I was interested in automobile repair in high school, and I went to a trade school and then started as a mechanic and then got hired with the City Garden Grove as a mechanic and then just worked up from there. But I've always been
That
interested
is
in
something
cars.
that, I mean, to me, that's one of the necessities of life, is knowing what to do when the car does such and such. Or maybe it is, I mean, my husband didn't know anything about a car. So he would have been, he couldn't even hang a mirror or a picture or anything. I don't know what he was good for, actually. But the fact that men that know how to, when the car is, there's something wrong with it.
Though I think it's a lost art of knowing an
It
internal
is.
combustion engine and tweaking and adjusting things.
And you can hear it, you start it and you go like, well, that's the carburetor or whatever. And to me, that's just like awesome that you can tell by the sound of it and, tinker underneath that hood with all those wires and cables and
Yeah.
stuff.
You go back to technology and YouTube. If you wanted to replace the window regulator on your own personal car, if you just put in the make and model, there's 6 guys that'll show you how to do it step by
Is
step.
Fantastic,
that
yeah.
not
Anybody can
amazing?
figure
It's
out how to do it.
fantastic.
It's
Really, as a
amazing.
resource for musicians too, it's fantastic. Because guys and gals are giving away their music and their licks all over the place. They're just giving it away. And it's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
I steal all the time.
Well, the part I like also is that how-to
Yeah.
on YouTube,
Oh, yeah.
how
And
do
then
I
it's as Steve
make a
said,
pie?
yeah,
How do
you
I
can-
fix my radio or whatever?
Right.
Yeah.
In the past, you needed to know somebody that had that knowledge,
Yes.
find them, and try and acquire it from
Yeah.
it. Now,
It's right
in
there.
seconds, it could be a guy in Japan that knows.
Tells you.
So
So
we
that's
now,
one of
so
the
we come back to
pluses.
our questions about. I'm curious about how our ethics and our morals will adapt, because this stuff ain't going away.
No,
It's here to stay.
it's going to get worse.
So there's
probably
there's
before it
you
gets
know,
better.
and I mean, let's face it, we're only half a chromosome away from chimpanzees. So we maybe if we could get if we
We're
could get
ahead or they're ahead.
that's what I'm saying. I'd like it to be a little bit more than just half a chromosome. Maybe
Yeah.
if we could get 3 or
Yeah.
4 chromosomes,
Yeah.
maybe we could make some real, some
Yeah.
real progress.
Yeah, but I mean, just thinking
I'm
about
trying to catch up.
the intelligence of, and I think I heard a professor once say that curiosity is a sense of genius. And so people like Einstein or, Alexander Graham Bell or you name it, how again, I'm sure it was their curiosity that got them to ticker around with this and figure out, oh, if this does this, then I could do this with that. I think that's where it starts, is a curiosity.
Well,
for
you
that.
think of,
Yeah.
of good old Newton sitting. I mean, I don't know what the mythology of Newton sitting under an apple tree, but an apple drops on his head, and it triggers him to be curious about why did that happen.
Yeah.
And then now we have Newtonian physics.
Yeah. It
and
has to
works.
start with someone, and it has to start with that.
And he was
why.
curious, yeah.
Curiosity, yeah.
Oh,
And that's, and I think we're going to get into politics, but the
Let's don't.
censorship of not being able to ask questions is very alarming.
Yeah.
Because it's human nature. When you look at something, to be curious, to understand it, you won't have to look from all sides.
Yeah.
So if anybody's telling you, no, this is a cup, you believe me, and you can only look from this direction. If you try to look from a different direction, you're a danger to society.
Yeah.
And that's, we don't want to go down that rabbit
No.
hole, but we need to preserve that freedom of, hey, Steve, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And collaborate to say, yeah, it looks the same over here.
But I
when
think
they
that
have
also- I think that also is necessary to stop somebody from going over an edge. It's like, did you hear what I heard? And if you have, a bunch of people saying, yeah, I think I heard that too, but they really didn't. So that, somebody, well, I won't go to P. Diddy, but somebody should have said something a long time ago and maybe he wouldn't have listened. But it's like, do we have close friends that would tell us, I think you're going over a little bit too far left or right or whatever it is, that would at least care enough to say, are you okay? We need to have close friends that will be not scared to say that to someone.
Kind of anecdotal on the subject is if you saw that experiment where a guy's like taking a test for an application or something, but they put him in a room with like 10 people, and smoke starts coming from under the door. Where if you were by yourself and you saw smoke, you'd probably be curious to investigate what's the source of that, what's going on. But everybody else is in on it, that they all completely ignore it. And very often people won't even acknowledge it because they don't want to go outside of the herd or the tribal thought, and won't.
That's what I don't like.
And it could cost their life
Yeah.
just because they don't want to, challenge the.
That's true.
It could
If you've ever
cost
tried
you-
to not stand up when a giant group of people have all stood up, it's almost impossible to not do.
But it's
Yeah,
also
we're
a risk you take in saying something truthful that you may get, a slap in the face or a
Yeah, the-
back turned against you because they didn't want to hear that. That to me, you're doing it out of love, saying this, but they don't accept it as such. So therefore, you stop saying it. I think our country's kind of at that point where we haven't really been upfront and truthful on a lot of
Again,
things.
there's so much.
Yeah,
There's
and
so much
people buy
going
a lot
on,
of that.
and people can say one thing, and true or not, the
You
next
can-
thing you know, it's out into the body politic, it's out into the population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's like
We need to get
Garth
better.
Brooks may as well just pack up and go to Indonesia because that's all over now. And I mean, look what that has done to whether he's guilty or innocent.
Who are you talking
Garth
about?
Brooks.
Oh,
Being
I'm behind
accused.
on the news, I guess.
Yeah, being accused of sexually harassment, whatever.
Shenanigans.
Yeah, and so of course, again, once that's out and people, as I said, we know now because of social media that it's over. Whether they proved him innocent or guilty or whatever, his life is pretty much over. His music and what, I mean, that to me is, we're innocent till proven guilty, not anymore. And social media condemns you, and that's the way it is. So
And that-
I don't want to leave on that note, though.
I
We're going to
think
have to wrap up, and I don't want to leave it on a downer.
Yeah, although on that subject, I think we're touching on is be curious, look at new information, but then we need to be better consumers of qualifying. Is this real or not real, or are they telling me this for some alternate reason to control us? That the deep fakes. Have you seen any of these where they could make it look like
But how do we
somebody's
fact check
saying this and they
anymore
never
when there's
said
no
it?
trusting place to fact check? Where do you even do that?
Yeah,
Yes, you're going to go on the internet to fact check something? No. So
I
where do
think
you really
there
go?
are some, you have to be discreet. I mean, not discreet. You have to be discriminating
Right.
about what you or where you look for your validation.
and not take everything as gospel. A lot
Right.
of times it's
Yeah.
being skeptical
So
is as
we
important
have
as
to
being
be
curious.
Curious about our
Absolutely.
sources.
Yeah,
Right.
Curious about our sources.
yeah. Question everything.
Well, guys, we're going to have to wrap up here in a minute, but it took directions. I didn't know which direction it would take, but I just knew that we wouldn't sit here without anything to chat about. that was a
Remember,
given.
George Carlin said, "Question everything." Children should not be taught. They should be taught to question everything,
Yeah.
not just be taught what.
Critical
Yeah.
thinking.
Critical
and they say they
thinking.
don't want critical thinkers.
They don't want it.
But
they
they're-
want people
are they-
just smart enough to file the papers and
Yeah.
put the boxes on the warehouse.
Are they going to, I mean, we need to have critical thinkers.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I think if you can measure thoughts, and this sounds real generally, but you probably don't get a lot of thoughts coming out of some of our younger generation. They're not generating any thoughts because they're not thinking. And look at that. That's
That's the
That's
same
scary.
question I was asking a while ago. What are they going to become?
yeah,
With this whole new
yeah.
paradigm that they're going to be living under with
I told one of my students,
social media and
he's a pastor in West Virginia, and I told him one day in class, I said, I'm really glad I'm old. And then about 3 minutes later, he started laughing. He said, I've never heard anybody say that. I said, in the society we live in, it's good to be old because, you're not going to be here that much longer to have to deal with it.
that's right. That's
Oh, and I don't
it's up
want to
you
leave on
now.
that note either, but this keeps
Although,
going.
did we hit the mark of what you were thinking? Just kind of informal
Over and
conversation?
above. I mean, I thought it was going to take actually more personal. I was curious about how you got into what you were doing. So it didn't take that much as it did more universal thoughts, which is fine. I didn't have any problem with that. I didn't have any set way of, well, no, let's get back to this. It wasn't that at all. It just took a life of its own, which it always does around you gents. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you guys and have
We'll
a
see
chat.
what
Yeah.
comes up next. I'll probably give you a call.
Great.
All right.